In this video, I'm going to show you how to use Microsoft PowerPoint to create book covers. That's right, Microsoft PowerPoint that's used to do presentation slides, that's used to do this presentation slide, can be used as a general purpose graphics design tool. And in this case, we're going to use it to create a book cover. Now, this is a special type of book cover. It's an inset image book cover. So rather than having the image cover the entire book cover, like this image covers this entire slide, what we do is we have maybe a colored background and we have little inset images, small squares of images on the screen. Now, I encourage you, before watching this course, to watch the course on book cover fundamentals so you'll know how to use colored boxes, text, and images to make book covers, and to know how to export images in 300 dpi resolution. So those are the two videos you should watch before watching this one. Let's jump over to PowerPoint and start creating a book cover. Here I am, I'm in PowerPoint, and I'm going to do File, and I'm going to create a new blank presentation. Now, if I put my cursor in the upper left, click and drag across here, I can select these two items and hit the delete key to get rid of them. Now I have a blank cover. Now you need to make your book cover the size of your paperback book. A Kindle ebook will take just about any cover size and be happy, but your paperback, the book cover has to be the same size as the paperback book. Now, the most popular size to print in is 6x9 on KDP. The reason is that's the cheapest to print. It's kind of like a trade paperback size. So I'm going to set my book cover for 6x9, which is what I'm going to publish my manuscript at or format it at. So let's go to, okay, I'm sorry, I did that while I was talking about something else. On the ribbon, where we're usually at home and stuff like that, I want to go to design. You may not have used this very often. Here you can change the slide design. Well, we're going to come way over here to the right to slide size, hit the down arrow, and then pick custom size. Now we have the width and height. I'm going to select them, make the width 6, and make the height 9 inches. And say OK. Now, since we have nothing on the screen, it doesn't matter whether you maximize or ensure fit. There we go. We have our book cover. Now, what you typically do is you have some kind of color in the background. Now, let's make this kind of a gray book cover. I kind of like that. So what we do is we right-click on the book cover and we go to Format Background. What this will do is it'll open the Format Background pane in the right. And here you can see we have solid fill. I can do a gradient from one color to another. I can do a texture or a pattern fill. What I find these to be too distracting, and they're not, actually some of the textures are really kind of interesting. Check this out. Look at these textures. These are really kind of neat. Anyway, what I want to do is do a solid fill, but I want a different color. It's kind of an interesting color, actually, but it's a little dark. Let's see if we can lighten it up, get it into more of the blue-gray kind of tone. I'd like that to be a little more blue-gray. So what we do is we click the down arrow on the color and we say more colors. That'll give us a color picker where I can go, how do I get this gray? I'm very blue now. I want to be, oh, can I pull it? Ah, there we go. I'm getting grayer as I come down. So let's get it a very kind of a blue-gray, kind of in that vicinity, and lighten it up just a tad. There we go. That should give me kind of a blue battleship gray kind of background. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to insert an inset image. Now, typically, we would format the background and we'd come down here to Picture and we'd insert an image, either from a file or stock images. Now, we're not going to do that in this case because we're going to use an inset image instead of a full image background. So we come up to Insert in the menu and come over to Pictures, hit the down arrow, and we want this device. Now, actually, let's do this first. Now, I can get images from stock images. I have a Office 365 license. And what that means is that with my license comes stock images and video that I can use for commercial use in anything. So if I want to insert an image, I can come here to stock images, and it gives me a list of stock images. Oh, I like these cats. Let's put them in here. And now it fills the whole width of the book cover. Now let's say we want this to be a small inset. First of all, I'd like to focus on the cats. So notice when the image is selected, when you click on it, these little balls show up around the edge. So select the image, and what we want to do is notice this too, when the image is not selected, we have nothing up here under search. When the image is selected, picture format shows up and it's orange. The reason it's orange is that it's dependent on what is selected, that particular menu item. So this has to do with this picture that is selected. And if I come to picture format, I have all kinds of options on formatting this picture. One of them, okay, let's see a few of these. Here's rotate, so I can flip it horizontally and stuff. But what I want is crop. So you pick crop, and these little crop handles show up. So what I want this to be is more or less square. So I'm going to pull in the left-hand side and pull in the right-hand side until it's just about square. And they're in the middle. There we go. I like that. Now, when you like the crop, you hit crop again, and it crops the image to that size. I can go and I can uncrop, by the way. I can get back the stuff that I cropped if I go and recrop it. Now, the next thing that I want is, this is a little large. It's kind of dominating my book cover. So I'm going to take the corner. Now, notice if I take the side, it doesn't maintain the aspect ratio. It crunches the image. So I don't want that. What I want to do is maintain the width and height relative to each other. So I'm going to grab a corner and pull it down to maybe about that size. There, I like that. Now I've got a little inset image. Now the image is kind of boring. It doesn't really have much pizzazz. And what I can do is I can add borders to it here. Notice this. On picture format again, I can add these various borders. I can give it a blurred border, a round border with a shadow. These various things I can do to it. Now, I can also make it round with a little shadow. And there are more of them if I pick the little drop down. I can angle it and so on. So what I want to do, though, is simpler. I want to do picture effects and do a little drop shadow on it. So let's do a drop shadow in this direction. Now you can see the drop shadow is very faint. So if I go to Format Picture, which I already have open on the right, normally it's here where you set the fill and so on. That's the fill and line. What you want to do is come to the effects, and I can open shadow and I can control this effect. So let's have the distance be more like 12 point. There we go. Now we're seeing a shadow. And in fact, what I'd even like is maybe something like 20 point. There we go. That's a nice shadow. And let's say it's a little faint for me. So what we want to do is take down the transparency. There, that makes it a little darker. Here I can change the color. I can change the angle of the shadow. So if I want the shadow to go this direction instead, that completely messed up the configuration I had on the shadow, which I like. There we go. Now I can also take this picture and I can format it, and I can give it a border of some line width. Let's say I want a big black border on it. I can pick the border, and then I can come picture border and come down to weight. I can make a really thick box around the outside. That looks kind of neat. And then I can control the color of the box. Border color. I can make it white. I kind of like that. So yes, there are effects. If I pick a picture and I come here, there are like styles that I can do, but I can do a lot of it myself just using borders and picture effects. So there, I have my picture. And the neat part is that this all is connected so that I can move it around. Now, the other way to do this is to insert a, let's take the border off this. We'll go to Picture, Effects, Shadow, No Shadow. Now, the other way to make a shadow is to just insert a shape, a rectangle, make it the same size as our box. I'll come all the way to the outside. To the outside of the box. There we go. Do a shape fill of black. So let's pick. Notice text is on the right, shape is on the left. So we want the shape to be black. We don't want an outline, so let's pick the outline and pick no outline. And then what you do is you offset it as far as you want. Now notice this is on top of the image, and that's a problem. What we can do is right-click on it and say Send to Back. There's a stacking order to all of the elements in PowerPoint. Now we have our drop shadow, but it looks kind of hard-edged. So we can take the shape, configure it, go to Shape Effects, and go to, where is Blur? Soft Edges. That's what it's called. So let's give it some soft edges. There we go. That looks more like a drop shadow. So that's the way to make a drop shadow. Now, the weird part of this is that they are two separate things. Remember our drop shadow when we had it moved around with us? This one doesn't. Now, how do you control that? Well, let's pick up here. I left-clicked up here. Now I'm dragging, and here's my selection box. Okay, I selected the shadow box in the background and the image in the foreground. Now I right-click on the edge of the item, and I select Group. Now they've been grouped as a single item, and I can move them around. I can also select the individual items inside. Here's the shadow box. Here's the image. So click on it once, you get the group. Click on the individual items inside the group and you get them. So I can manipulate them still individually, undo that, or I can manipulate them as a group. Now we want to take our little image and put it over here. Let's say pretty close to the edge. Now we need some text. I'm going to call this book. Now notice as I move this around, you get these red dashed lines. This one means that it's centered left and right. This one means, where's the other one? There it is. It's centered up and down. So this is dead center on the book cover. So it helps you to align. I want this, let's say, centered up and down and off to the right. There we go. Now let's insert some text. I'm going to insert a text box, and I click up here and I say book title. That's kind of small and uninteresting. So what I can do is I can select the text in the text box by going double click, well, actually triple click, I'm sorry. Double click selects a word, single click. This is about clicking, and it works the same in just about every application. Single click positions your cursor. Double click selects a word. Triple click selects the line. This works in all Windows applications. I don't know about Mac. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to go down and find, I like a font called Baskerville Oldface. And then I'm going to set its size. This, by the way, is on the home menu on the ribbon. I'm going to set its size to, say about that size. Now, I need the title. So notice this too. If I click on a text box in the middle, I position the cursor and I can select things and I can type things to modify words in here. If I move to the edge of the box, my cursor changes to a movement arrow. Now when I click, watch the dashed line around the box becomes a solid line. That means the box is now selected. So what you want to do, if you want to move the text, get the movement arrows by selecting the edge of the box. If you want to manipulate the text, click inside the box. Now what we want to do is select the box, right-click on it, and say duplicate. Oh, I'm sorry, copy. Now you can also select the box and hit Control-C, and I can hit Control-V, or I can select anywhere and select paste. I'm going to hit Control-V. That pastes a copy of that title. And I move it down to the bottom. Let's say I center it. There, you see the centering line left to right? Now also, you want to keep elements of your book cover at least a ½ inch away from the outside edge. This is for trim size, so that they can have trim errors on cutting your book. You want to not have text or your images within ½ inch of the edge. Now let's go here, and we'll change this to author name. There we go. And we'll recenter it. We got the centering line. We're a ½ inch up. Now, this is more or less a book cover with an inset. It's a little boring. I could put Amazon bestseller, and this is a great paranormal book, stuff like that. But what I need to do is maybe put in some colored boxes to spruce things up. And there's 2 ways to do this. Let me show you. First, I can insert a shape, a colored box, or not a colored box. I insert a shape, a rectangle. The rectangle here. So I pick that. Notice, oh shoot, shape, I undid it. Rectangle, notice the cursor becomes a cross. That means I'm inserting the rectangle. So I click on the upper left-hand edge of the rectangle, and I go to the lower right-hand edge of the rectangle. There we go. And I now have a colored box. Now notice that there's some problems with the colored box. First, its fill, I think the fill is a pretty good color, but its shape has an outline. So let's get rid of the outline on the shape. There we go. And it's also in front of the text. Now I can right-click on this and I can send to back. There's a stacking order to all elements on the screen. And I can actually see that stacking order by coming to Home, going all the way across to select in the editing panel, hit the down arrow and say, show me the selection pane. This shows me the stacking order of all the elements on the page. So I have text, and if I click on it, it highlights. Here's text 8. Here's text 7. Text 7 is above the rectangle. If I put the rectangle above, notice I can drag the layers here and move them around. Now it's above the text layer. So what you want to do is you want to keep these layers in the order that you want. You can either do that by right-clicking on elements. Let's right-click on this thing. Notice I can send to back, or I can bring to front. On this group, notice I can do the same with this text. I can, I got to get the edge of the text box, and then I can send to back and bring to front. Or I can go to Home, Select, Selection Pane, display the selection pane, and drag things around in the selection pane to control their stacking order. Now, this text now should be probably white. So let's select it, go to Shape Format. Shape is to the left, the text is to the right, so I'm going to make the text white. I can put an outline on it too, on the text. Look at that black outline. I don't like that. So I click the down arrow and I go to No Outline. Now, let's take this box, go to the edge, right-click, and say Copy, and then let's Control-V it. And we'll move this box down to the bottom. So we have the same colored box behind our author name. Let's get it even. There we go. And once again, we have a problem in the stacking order. So I right-click on the box and I say send to back. And now let's select the text. I can either drag or I can triple click. And then I come up to shape format. The text side, I want it to be white. Oh, I'm sorry, I just did the shape side. Okay, go to the text side. And since I've already selected white, I can automatically get it just by hitting that. And no outline. We have no outline. So that makes the book cover look a little more interesting. Let's move this kind of off-centered like that and move the title down. Now, let's move the title down. This is interesting. Notice I have a text box. So I move that, but the other box doesn't move. Or the box doesn't move, the text box moves, the rectangle doesn't. What I can do is drag around these things to select both the text and the box. So see here, here's the box, here's the text. They're both selected. I go to the edge of either one, right click, and say group. Now this is a group. So I can go to the edge and I can move the box and the text around, or I can go and click inside the group. So a second click and I can move individual items within the group. So I can work with individual items, or I can work with the whole thing as a group. Click on it once, it's the group. Click on it a second time, you're working on an item inside the group. And notice you get to see what is selected here. If you want to select things, you can also use the selection pane to select the right thing that you want. Now let's go ahead and group these too. Right click, group. There we go. Now this is a group too. Now there's another way to insert text and boxes that groups automatically for you. Now this is a little less flexible, but it also makes things simpler. Let me show you this. I'm going to insert a shape, a rectangle, and here's the crosshairs. So I'm inserting a rectangle. Let's do another book title. Notice it has that border. Let's get the shape outline off. And then notice this. If I double click, there's the text. So double click on a shape and you can put text in it. So I can put book title. Let's triple click that book title, come up to home, where I can set it to Baskerville and increase the size. There we go, to 66. Now the benefits to this is it's automatically grouped. The downside to this is notice what happens if I increase the size of the text. It reaches the border limits on the box and it goes to 2 lines. So that's a downside to this box effect, and that's why the other one is more flexible. If I select all this text, I just dragged over it, and I increase the size of this, it goes outside the box quite happily. And sometimes that's an effect that you want to produce. Whoop, I moved the whole thing. Let me undo that. Undo is up here in the left-hand corner, by the way, and it's your friend. Use it a lot. So I selected and I moved the group. I want to move this text, so I click again and I get the text and I can move it around and go, you know, kind of an offset like that, which is really tough to do with a book title that's in a rectangle. This is rectangle text. This is a text box on top of rectangle. So 2 ways to make colored boxes. Now, once again, you can do effects to the colored boxes. Let's go and select this colored box and notice shape format pops up. And I go to shape effects and I do a drop shadow on it. There we go. Now we have kind of a shadow. And once again, I can take this shape, right click on, go to format shape, and I can come over to the center thing controls the shadow, and I can make it the distance bigger. There we go. Look at that shadow distance. Everything that goes off the slide, by the way, gets cut off. This is what the book cover will look like. So actually, it's not showing the shadow. That's interesting. And notice the shadow is going over our picture. So we want to pick the picture and we want to say bring to front. So it goes over the shadow. Well, this is kind of a boring book cover. It needs some more stuff like Amazon bestseller, the greatest book on earth about cats, all of this stuff. And you align it all over the cover. So notice, all you got to learn to create book covers in PowerPoint is how to manipulate and configure text, colored boxes, and images. Put them all together, and you have yourself a book cover. Now, when you're ready, of course, while you're working on this, you should be saving. And saving will save as a PPTX file. This is a PowerPoint file. Now, I'm going to save this in pictures. Oh, let's save it in documents. What the heck? So presentation 2 PPTX. Yeah, I've already got one. Go ahead and replace it. And then, so nothing can use this except PowerPoint. To make it usable by other things, you export a JPEG. So you go to File, all right? We're going to File, Export, change file type, double click on JPEG, and here you see it's saving presentation to JPG. So there's your JPEG file, which you can load into any other program. Now what it's asking us is I can have multiple slides in here. And what it'll do is it'll export all the slides to separate JPEGs. We just have one, so we'll say just one. But one of the techniques you can do is let's duplicate this particular thing. To do that, I went to the browsing, the navigation pane here, and I said duplicate slide. I can also come here, I can just select and say delete. So I can have multiple slides, and when I go to export, I can export all slides, and it'll create different JPEG files for each one of them, which is kind of cool. I like maintaining all my files for a series in a single PowerPoint thing. So what you can do is you can duplicate a book, and then you can go change its title and stuff, and it'll have a similar format for branding. And that's creating a book cover with an inset image in PowerPoint.